Hello everyone, my name is Alex Schlegel, and I will be running you through my Age of Empires 2 level named French Raiding. Now, as the level begins, you start off in this massive battle that just does not go your way. And you're given a handful of troops that you had kept in reserve to try and rebuild your army. I made this purely off the idea of those old medieval battles that are almost always one-sided, because one side is never prepared. The Game of Thrones Battle of the Bastards also helped inspire this, purely because of the scale and just the sheer amount of work that went into that. Now, there's a lot of design elements that went into this level, one of which was accommodating for multiple playstyles while still keeping true to the Age of Empires 2 essentially feel and aesthetic and spirit. So throughout my time playing Age of Empires, I've always noticed that most levels play very kind of one-sided in the beginning. You can't make a whole lot of progress without bolstering your army and just kind of turtling and sitting and gathering resources for a while. Now, in the beginning, when I first made this level, you started off with your town hall and a handful of villagers. Through playtesting and just different pacings, I've learned that that isn't how Age of Empires 2 works. You are given multiple buildings to start off with, as well as 300, 400, 500 resources to try and rebuild and speed you along as best as possible without over-empowering you. Now, this level was kind of meant to emulate that. It was meant to create multiple playstyles and multiple pathings, as well as keeping some set design elements that you see briefly, and really make the Age of Empires 2 level, or this level, feel like something out of the campaign. Now, it goes through it briefly, so I'll have to cover it in the post-mortem, but there are multiple elements that portray the long and arduous campaign that the British have been waging against the French. The graves, as well as one of the forts, portray that there have been previous battles here, and the graves themselves are from, at least through the story, are of fallen soldiers that helped you on the campaign. Now, if you look to the north, there's another faction that'll help you, and they give you 3 trebuchets and send you along your way. And then if you donate resources to them, they'll help fight for you. Now, this I did purely off of pacing, and to give the player something more to help them. Because in the beginning, as you saw, it is extremely one-sided. So giving the player 3 more trebuchets and somebody that can help fight for them gives the player a lot more capabilities. They don't essentially have to worry about massive attacks or spending an hour and a half trying to bolster their army, level them up, and then get them into the fight. With the allies, you're given some stuff, and then if you need it, you can tell them to attack, and they attack. As you'll see in my future gameplay, they do help me out and provide a distraction for the most part. However, the French AI does not attack lightly. As you'll see in my gameplay, the French only attack after I do, because currently they have no idea where I am. And when the player starts, they have no idea where the French fort is either. They are just given a road, which leads them in a direction which assumedly is where the French are. And then using the battle area itself, which is that massive open area in the forest, they are able to kind of differentiate and use their intuition as to where the French fort is. Now, this level was difficult to balance, purely because of the amount of troops that I placed in the beginning. And as I've played through a few of the Age of Empires 2 levels, I learned that a lot of levels are like that. They are overbalanced on one side and force you to sit down and strategize. And I didn't have a very good strategy in the beginning. However, my thought process behind my attacks was, okay, the waterways are defended, there's a whole ton of troops in the center area, I don't want to brute force my way in, and I don't want my troops getting stuck on or behind enemy lines. So the forest is my sneaky backdoor attack way. And for the most part, the French will not attack you. They don't even know that you're there until you start attacking them. They don't really pay any attention to that backwoods pathway. And the design behind this was me thinking back to back home. I owned a cabin, and there was a whole ton of trails that we never knew were there until we stumbled across them. And there were breaks in the trees and natural meadows that created something very similar to this map and guided you towards one thing or another. Many times back home it was to another cabin. However, I wanted to try and use that thought process and guide the player in a specific direction. I also tried to use the roads through the center to try and help move the player along. Now, the thought process behind the roads was, okay, there's a French castle. Why would a French castle be in a forest? Why would the French want to defend the forest? What is there? So I'm like, okay, the French would want to defend a village. Why would a village be there? To gather resources to expand their borders. Okay, cool. What would they do to defend against it? They'd place up walls, they'd place up towers, and they would try and watch every main avenue of approach, which is why you'll see the 3 guard towers. And now, as you can see in my gameplay, I didn't strategize very well, so I'm having to retreat. Now, okay, the French are there. They're there as a colony, and they've been there for a while, so they have a road established. If they have a road established, they will also have to trade, and thus their market was placed. So the French had a way to trade, they had a waterway to sustain themselves, and they have forts to defend themselves. Perfect. We have a reason for the French to be there. And now the British, I just banked off of the old British Crusades, or conquests, I should say, through France. And I remember Robin Hood and several other movies that I had watched saying that those crusades were extremely costly. And so, or those attacks were extremely costly. And the British needed to refill their coffers, get more gold, and essentially find a way to survive. So they attack the French. And now this crusade has been long and hard and has worn on your troops so badly that there's only a handful of them left, and their attacks fail, and they've had to bury most everybody. Okay, cool. The British are now desperate and willing to do anything. That's kind of the thought process that I had behind making this level. Hopefully the set design helps portray that. And during my playtests, nobody seemed to comment on him, making me think that it wasn't as prevalent. However, I placed some key elements here and there to try and help the player view these items. If you look by the graves, there's a bunch of berry bushes, which, alright, the player always needs more food. So they go and grab the berry bushes. And in the beginning, you're also scouting around, and many players start in the 4 corners. So I placed a shipyard to give the player another building that they could go off of and help create that food income using fishing boats. And abandoned settlements were not uncommon back in the feudal age or in medieval ages. It wasn't amazingly common, though. So, going off of the French village idea, the shipyard has been abandoned and was used purely as kind of a trading area. Kind of refit, repair your ship, get new crew, offload some items, pick up some more, or offload hunters, pick up their wares, kind of something like that. And as you can see now, I've ordered the attack, and the enemies are the allies are helping me attack. And then once again, I didn't strategize and didn't plan out my army as well, so I lose half of my troops in this engagement alone. However, I also make good headway against the French troops, and thus kind of dwindle their army down. And so, yes, the French are purely there to expand their borders and earn some more revenue. The Riverway, originally it was supposed to be that back door. However, throughout the gameplay, I didn't know where else to put berry bushes that would make sense, because they didn't quite make sense in the middle of a massive battle. So I started placing fish, and every riverway has fish for the most part. Every now and again there's a handful of that don't, but every riverway has fish. And in the medieval ages, my thought would be, okay, they don't have a whole bunch of crap going into the water. They don't have a whole bunch of mining operations soiling the water. So there'd be more fish. And thus you have, like I did 6 fishing vessels and sent them up and down the river collecting fish. And thus I had one more avenue of food. As you can see, it's rather confined to this, or the player is rather confined to this one area for building safely. So farms are really kind of take up too much space. And so the player is forced to go seek other avenues of food. And another thing to be noted about the forest area was that it was supposed to be more treacherous. However, many of the wolves seem to have died when the first army came in, or when the French first scouted the area in the beginning, and the rest were killed by my own armies. So it's very much a risk-reward style map. As you can see, the French placed another fort, or another castle, on the forested end, the dark forested area, to try and balance out that defense. In the Age of Empires 2 editor, there's only so much freedom that the designer is given, and then the AI themselves just do whatever they see fit, which makes the designer's work a little more difficult, because as you can see, they build whatever, they raise up whatever army they see fit. So controlling that is almost impossible. However, given the early game balancing, it actually works out quite well, and forces the player to think, re-strategize, and come up with that A-plus plan to take the French fort. Now, as you can see, we're nearing the fort, so we've destroyed one castle. Okay, cool. What else is there? I haven't gotten the victory yet, and I haven't pushed in. Oh, there's the other castle. Perfect. And the enemy, or the allied faction acts as a bit of that scouting element as well, because there's no possible way for a scout to survive an encounter and make it into the French fort, or French village, I should say. And thus, once they're in, or once your troops are in, depending on how you played it, if you played that really fast kind of attacker and destroyed the walls and made it in, reinforcements from the infantry will come in, or archers. It all depends on how the player wishes to play it out. So, yeah, there's my level. I'm doing a quick fly through. Should show you all what I've put in. And yeah, I hoped you enjoyed my project. Thank you so much for your time, and I will see you all again later.